reflect, I'm a little bit, I'm angry, I'm angry, but like I said, my emotions fluctuate. So just to give you a little temperature check right there. Could you hear me? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you. I'll go ahead and let Alex go.
I wish I could have had the pre-recorded button.
I'm gonna get those moments back. Just wait.
No. In all seriousnness, like Pastor Simmons, today my temperature is pretty high. I think this probably the past 6 days has been extremely high. And before I get into the present stuff, I'll go back. Majority of the killings that have taken place in Evansville since May have happened less than 1,000 feet from my house. So that's the layer that right there alone has affected me the most. In the shooting prior to those two, I played football against Larry Merriweather for at least 2 years. And so I knew him. We were out. We've been in the same places plenty of times. And then you add on an opportunity here in our community where we're able to, we have the luxury of having a lot of great relationships to really set the stage to do a lot of things, whether it relates to police, community relations, improving housing, improving public safety in general. And for me, a lot of it has been, it's easy to say, yeah, I'm with you, I'm against racism, but when the rubber meets the road and we have an opportunity to do what we're talking about, you lose traction. Sometimes people don't, follow through. But with all that being said, it's just my temperature right now. I'm ready for, this place we call Evansville, our home, to really be true to what our ambition statement is for everyone. And right now I'm laser focused on making sure that happens, whether it's through my day job working with EVSC or my part-time job that sometimes feels like a second full-time job, here in the city of Evansville, really making the advances for everyone. But I look forward to this discussion. I forgot to say, my name is Alex Burton. I have the pleasure of serving as the 4th Ward representative of the City Council, and I also serve as the president of that body.
Thank you, Alex. We'll now hear from Saeed Walcott.
Okay. As she stated earlier, I'm Saeed Walcott. I'm an Evansville native. Went right down Washington Avenue, Dexter, Washington, and Bossy. Go Dogs. I am a Ivy Tech alum. Robotics and automation. I'm currently working for an automation integrator, Midwest Motion. We're on 921 Park Street. So I'm using my schooling and putting it to good use at the moment. But as for my temperature, I think much like both gentlemen have alluded to before me, it's a bit high. But for me, for a couple of different reasons, I think of things in processes and steps. And the other 3 gentlemen have parents who probably in their 60s-ish, late 50s, 60s. Well, desegregation was 68, I think, around 68, 67. So the other 3 gentlemen are first generation, like no Jim Crow, no segregation, no blacks only, no whites only. And if you think about that, 60, 70 years, it's not that long. My mom was first generation because she's 52. So my grandfather, my late grandfather, Elroy Harden, who served as a fireman here in Evansville, he went through that. And now I'm 25. I'm the youngest member on the panel. And things that I read in my history books are happening right now. The things that you know, we were told that it was over, you know, it's not, racism doesn't exist, there's not this, everybody has an equal opportunity, it's Indiana, it's not the South, not realizing that Indiana and Evansville, that I might add, played a very integral part in the KKK movement for the North. As I want to say, Indiana was KKK capital for a while. So moving forward with how I feel, I think it's time to have real conversations and take away the semantics and take away the, you know, well, you know, I don't see color. And it's time to have real conversations because people are dying and dying at a rapid rate. People are losing their jobs. People are being discriminated against, and not just in the Black community. We have women that are being discriminated against, the LGBT community. There's a lot of systematic injustice going on in America. And I feel like until we address it like head on, we'll never come up with a solution.
Thank you so much, Saeed. I'm going to hear from Phil Smith now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being here. I'm Phil Smith from the Evansville Police Department. I serve as the Special Projects Coordinator for the Police Department. In that job, I wear many hats. I do a lot of the media and social media stuff. I do a lot of the community outreach piece for the police department. When I was told that I'd be on here with a preacher, a politician, and a prodigy, and you had a policeman, I thought it was the start of a bad joke. But I'm very glad that you guys have me here. I guess my temperature would be extremely high right now, and I would say feverish. And in the sense that the journey of a police officer is different and peculiar in and of itself. The journey of an African-American police officer is a very different journey. You get pulled from all different sides. You hear all different sides of arguments. You hear all different types of insults. So you have to soak all that in and swim through the waters of uncertainty and pick out and choose what you feel is righteous and the cause that you should follow. I really appreciate Saeed's comments about being the youngest panelist here. A lot of the stuff he was talking about, I could identify with. My parents are parents that had to sit in balconies and drink from fountains that said colored and things of that nature. And in the job that I do in and of itself, it has changed. Years ago, Black people couldn't be police officers. And then conversations were had, like Saeed says we need to have, and change was made. Then you had Blacks that could be police officers, but they could only police certain pockets. Well, then conversations were had and change happened. And now you have it to where I can be on a panel talking to Black Americans, white Americans, Latinos, and people from all different backgrounds. So I'm very interested to share what I have to share. I'm very interested in hearing what I need to take in, absorb and learn. And I just really appreciate being a part of this process.
Thank you, Phil. I do appreciate your words that you shared with us on today. Now I have time for questions or things to be typed into the chat section. But at this time, the four of you all can unmute your microphones, and the four of you all can communicate with one with another, please. I know that Saeed has some more things he may want to say directly, and some of you may have as well. So you all can go ahead and do so.
I would just like to piggyback even on what Councilman Alex had talked about. You know, basically we're getting hit from all different type of angles because we see what's going on, you know, around the globe, but also we're getting hit here in our own city with our young people killing each other. And that's another dagger that raises my temperature even more, you know, because I understand we can't save the world. We'll never be able to stop the violence, but if we don't do anything, you know, things get worse. You know, I'm a firm believer, yes, you can't stop it, but you can help, you know, curb it, of course. So that's another angle I look at. You're dealing with something as a Black man, you know, across the globe, but then also in your own community. And we just can't sit back and just shake our heads and say that's a shame. We as leaders, we as Black men, you don't even have to have a title as a leader. Just as a father, a Black man, we can come together and do something. So that raises my temperature, just a little bit higher.
Absolutely. I agree with everything. Another thing I'd like to add, I appreciate being a part of the panel because all three of the other gentlemen have either watched me grow up or looked out for me through school. And I want to say to you gentlemen, thank you for allowing me to sit with you and discuss with you on such important and dire topics. So I appreciate that. That being said, I feel as if right now, Evansville is in an interesting predicament. As I said, I'm not old, but I remember a time when it was okay to walk anywhere in Evansville. That's kind of what we did. We used to call it mobbing, but I mean, it'd be nothing to see a group of 10, 15 plus people literally walking down the street, going to Zesto's to get some ice cream or going to Sam's Food Mart, just going somewhere and enjoying our time. And now it seems as if violence has consumed our city. And it puts me in an interesting place because I'm not a police officer. I'm not a councilman. I'm not a preacher. But I can't sit back and not do anything, right, as Pastor Simmons said. And I think it's time we as Black men start to get in front of things, start implementing after school camps or even by call. A lot of things are technology based now. So if it's a text line or a chat line, if it's, we meet once a week or once a month, but get some of these young guys in and just love on them. Cause I know that helped me. Being a Black man growing up in a predominantly white society is tough. And there's nobody who can help you navigate through those obstacles like another Black man. But not all insight is good insight, if that makes sense. And I think there needs to be a more positive outlet for our youth, a positive outlet for our youth to learn how to invest their money, a positive outlet for our youth to be financially literate, a positive outlet for our youth to learn more about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, the field that I'm in now. I was in Ivy Tech and I was the only person in the technology department my whole 2 years. I was the only African-American male. I think there was maybe one other, but he graduated my first semester. It's hard going through life that way. And I think we need to provide some sort of outlet for our brothers to have a chance. I think it's really nice that Phil became a police officer because Phil watched most of us grow up, which is something that most police officers can't say. Phil was a substitute teacher and he was a counselor and he was involved in the community far before he picked up a badge. And me personally, I think that should be a requirement for police officers. How can you how can you protect and serve a community you don't know? You can't protect and love on something that you don't know. So I think implementing those types of things to build relationships, not only between the Black community and ourselves, but the Black community and the police department, council members, heads of banks, heads of insurance companies, bridge that gap.
And to bounce off of that, so I've had some conversations, and that's the problem, right? So if we're going through school, if we know that there's a third grader that can't read, the chances of him or her not being able to read by 8th grade, there's probably likely still. And right. Then they're expected to thrive in high school. And, by the time they get to high school, they're so far behind that they can't even get into the programs that EVSC has to really make sure that our kids are finding success in whatever path that they're going to. And so for me, I think a lot of what our focus needs to be on is supporting. It doesn't necessarily have to be, during the course of the school day, but having those supports in the evening, on the weekends, whatever, that really support the best development of our kids, right? So the kids now, they don't have anything. They're at home. It's part of why the DNA lab was established with the African American Museum, but that's for 7th and 8th graders. You know what I mean? Like for elementary school kids and majority of middle school kids, there's nothing for them to do but run these streets. And right now, their models that they looking up to are the ones making all these rap videos with the Call of Duty guns, you know, at their disposal. And so that kid sees that and it's like, you know what, I'm gonna go down this path. You know what I mean? And that's been the hardest thing for me to really see. And then for, you know, organizations that we have in our community, a lot of the organizations that have money, they aren't the ones that are out here on the front lines reaching our kids.
Right.
And so here you have a Young and Established or Boss who are underfunded, but have the most impact with our kids. And our organizations with the most amount of money sitting back like everything's okay, they get 20, 30 kids through the door and think they're doing something.
Yeah.
When it's nothing for Young and Established or Boss to get 200 kids on a cookout. The kids are going to attract to them. And I think the disconnect, as we talk about systemic racism and all that sort of stuff, that to me, that's it.
Yeah.
If you have access to millions of dollars and you're okay sitting in your walls and, you know, taking care of the kids that come to you without reaching out and seeing the amount of kids that we have running the streets, getting into trouble and not really trying to, you know, bridge that gap, what are we really doing? And, you know, that's the frustrating thing to me now. And, you know, now it's like, well, what can I do? What can I do? I'm like, listen, there are people doing the work now. Like, allow them to get the resources that you have that's sitting in your bank account, get that to them. And it's frustrating. And I'll say this and I'm done. And then what do you do with a kid who grows up in Parkside? Not saying that anything's wrong with, but what do you do with that? It's a mental situation where the kid is seeing exposed to a whole lot, way more than what needs to be exposed to an elementary kid. And he can't even get away from it because the park doesn't have a basket. It's a park and they have a basketball court, but the basketball court don't even have goals on it. You know, I'm like, what is that?
Yeah.
And then they go to school and the schools that they're attending aren't meeting their needs. And then they're caught in trouble and they're acting out because they don't have too many people in the building that can relate to them. And I'll say this and then I'm done. You all know I work for the EVSC, and I remember one time there was a girl getting in trouble in the hallway, and I felt so bad because it legit was a miscommunication. Like that's all it was. She was upset, and the teacher was like, "You need to sit in the hallway and calm down." Like I'm sitting there looking like I just did one of these. Like you all right? Like don't even worry about it. And that kind of interaction is the things that there's a lot of missed opportunities. So I think even moving forward, when school starts back and all that, it's really on the community to really wrap around and figure this thing out. And I'm not just saying Black community. I'm saying community as a whole.
Community in general, yeah.
In general, you know, this is it, I promise. When I was, you know, in the summer, you look at the summertime, for me, it was midnight basketball at least twice a week. And we was going, after it was over with, we was going mob. Yeah, we may have been in middle school, high school, and walking the streets at midnight. But you know what? We had something to do at that time. Versus now, you have nothing. So what's going to happen quite naturally? You're going to sleep during the day, and you're going to be up all night. And when you're up all night, ain't nothing going to happen positive.
Right.
Well, gentlemen, I really appreciate your open commentary and your honesty. You guys hit on so many points, and I see questions pouring in. Several of them were directed towards me. So I'm going to do my best
I'm going to read them aloud to everyone. I just wanted to let you know.
Okay. I saw several questions coming in. I was trying to stay on task of listening to Saeed and Alex both, and also keep in mind to try to answer some of the questions that some of the members have that are listening. Saeed, I think you made a very good point when you said that you had prior knowledge of me, and that helped with my ability to police in this community. For those of you that don't know, I see several people in the group chat that I've known for some time. I spent several years in the EVSC as an after-school programs coordinator. And to Alex's point, I coached in midnight basketball. And so when I come in my desk and I got to look at this obituary of Keonjay Barnes, I've known this young man since he was a kid. And, you know, the other day I paid my respects to his family as I watched a young man who, wasn't even old enough to drink, in a casket. And later next week, I'll see another young man who's one of my students at Evans Middle School, and I'll see him laying in a casket. And that is disheartening,
Wow.
to say the least. And as a police officer, you get blowback for the violence that happens in your community. Like, what are you doing, Mr. Officer, to stop this violence? But also at the same time, as these officers are attacking us. So you get pulled from so many different ways. And we know that, like I said earlier, you have to swim through this, I guess, pond of just information, and you have to pick out what's righteous and what's true and then go with it. And in doing so, you have to be honest in your assessment of yourself, and you have to be honest in your assessment of the community, and you have to have tough conversations and tough talks like we're going to have here today. As a police officer, we're first responders. So by nature, we're called, we go where we're called. So a lot of the things that happen violently in our community, unfortunately, we don't have the foresight to prevent those, or we don't have the ability to prevent those things from happening in the beginning, because we're not mind readers. We're not fortune tellers. So we can't be somewhere in a position to stop something before it happens. Those things happen when we can go back to, I believe it was Pastor Simmons or Councilman Burton talking about the father in the home. I have to raise my child, my son. I have a son that's going to hopefully grow up to be a black man in this community. He has to have a positive influence from his mother, and he has to have a positive influence from his father. We have to work together to ensure that that young man does have something to do, so that the idle hands aren't the devil's tools, so that he can't be roaming around in the middle of the night with nothing to do, because he should be tired from all the chores and all the education that we made him handle all day long in the first place. He should be, he should know that on Sunday that he's going to be forced to wear dress clothes because he's going to get his butt in somebody's church. These are the things that have to happen as a community member. And I know I'm a police officer, but I'm going to speak to you guys as a brother and as a community member, because there not be a separation in the two. You have a job in the community. I have a job in the community. Though those capacities are different, we still serve in the same capacity as community members. I used to get my hair cut in the same barbershops as a lot of them. So
now you just get it shined.
so I'm going to be the first one, vulnerable. I'm not wearing a protective vest in this conversation. So I'm going to be vulnerable, and I'm going to take those tough questions, and I'm going to do the best of my ability to answer those tough questions. But at the same time, I'm going to give positive and honest feedback. I'm going to give, whether that feedback stings or hurts, or whether you agree or disagree. Statistics are important. Are they to say all? No, they absolutely aren't, but they do say something. And so we can discuss all the things that everyone wants to discuss in this conversation. Just know that any criticisms that you may have for me, or any criticisms that I may have for you, whether they be positive or negative, they all come from a place of love, because we're having a family conversation.
And can I just say this? And I think, and maybe you all agree with me, I think that we're at the point where we need all hands on deck.
Yeah.
You can't have your fabulous five or whatnot. This thing is getting to the point we need everybody, because there's some people that, may be able, as it relates to these young people, that may have the ear of the young people that, I don't, or even Officer Phil, it's tentacles to this thing. So I really believe we need all hands on deck, all positive hands, on deck, that are really for real about changing this thing. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, and to add on to that, man, Pastor Simmons, I a while back, I posted a status that said, we're not in the space in our community where we're excluding people for, what their past may have looked like.
Yeah.
And I was specifically talking about those who may have, been incarcerated for having some drugs here, they're selling drugs, you know what I'm saying? Like, you look at that, I can't tell someone what the prison process is like. I can't,
right.
What the prison experience is like. I can't. And I can only talk to, kids or students if they're in that world. I can only talk to them for so much. I can say, hey man, don't do it. And I can say, hey, I mean, you can make more money doing X, Y, and Z than doing, you know what I'm saying, selling. And you can sleep peacefully at night. That only is gonna go so long. And then to add to that point, I think back to the RAMP program, you know, a kid legit came up to me and said, Alex, what do I need to do? Like, I was like, what do you mean what you need to do? He said, man, I'm about to graduate. And I said, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I said, what do you mean you don't want to do this for the rest of your life? He said, man, look at this. He was like, outside of us, it may be 2 or 3, it only may be 2 or 3 other Black people in this whole building. I said, that's part of the problem. I said, so you need to be, you know, add to that number of workers and get this money. I was like, it's not going to be easy. I was like, but living, you know, K through 12, it ain't like you went to a totally all Black school anyway. He was like, you right. I'm thinking, man, listen, you have an opportunity here. There's plenty of money to be made out here. Starting out, making more money than what I'm making right now, combining EBSE and my school, you can make that much money starting right out if you apply yourself. And to get that through the student's head is easier now because they got that track record. But Saeed, I think back to your age group, I mean, you know, you had to figure it out yourself because there was nothing in place.
Nothing.
And you were engaged, you know what I'm saying? You were engaged in the community, been around, you know, all of that. But the average high school student, your average peer wasn't around, right? They didn't have that community impact, so they figured it out themselves. And 9 times out of 10, what they saw on the streets happening, they gravitated towards what they saw on the streets happening. And back then it was, you know, flashing the gun here or there, maybe some shots in the air. But at some point in time, maybe some shots in the air. But you think about that when the kids are seeing that a shot in the air occasionally, oh, that's whack. I want to actually shoot somebody. So then it went to, all right, let me shoot somebody in the leg or shoot somebody in the arm. And that's what it was. And then from there it went, nah, I'm gonna catch a body. And so it's legit got worse at a pace that's outpaced the positive reinforcements structured around our youth.
Wow. Like that whole little 5-minute span right there between you 3 was amazing. And but it's like we're all feeding off each other. I really like this. But it brought me back to one of the things that I said, and I think I saw a question about it in the chat. You know, Saeed, how do we get more Black and brown students involved in our technology department? And not just technology department, how do we get them involved in learning? I think should be the bigger question because it's not cool to be smart, if I could say that. And anybody who knows me or has been on this panel, I have been a nerd my whole life. It's never changed. I've always been the weird kid. I've always been the church kid. I did have an opportunity to play sports, but I mean, that doesn't really separate you from anything. I was always the nerd. And I did have to navigate most of my classes being either the only or one of less than 3 African Americans in class. And I think it helps to see people who look like you, even if they're not in your community, but start introducing them to NSBE. You know what I mean? There is a Black nurses organization here in Evansville. There are plenty of Black physicians and things like that in Evansville. And like Alex was saying, if it's money that you want, you're going to have to understand that anything worth having is going to take some work. And I think our youth are glorifying this microwave mentality of, oh, well, if I sell 2 pounds of drugs, then I'm gonna have money. You know what I mean? Or if I kill these people over here who I went to school with, we sat at the same lunch table, but because I'm wearing green and you're wearing red, so now we're not friends. You know what I mean? Like, if we get away from that mentality, I think that's where the growth is going to lie, and it's going to take, as Minister Simmons said, a community effort from not only the people who are even here on this video, but we've got cousins and uncles and aunts who we have conversations with on the regular. And those conversations never leave our living room. They never leave our home. They never leave the deacons meeting at church. It never leaves the council meeting. You know, we have these conversations and nothing is put into action. And I was always told that actions speak louder than words. So what I can do to answer that question, and I can start now, I would like to not so much a mentor program, but a mentor program for our youth, to teach them about trades. You can be a carpenter, a construction worker, a welder, a pipe fitter, a steam fitter. You can do painting. You can become a robotics technician. You can become an electrician. Ivy Tech offers all of that. Like it's all there. And guess what? They're gonna pay you $50,000 to $70,000 to do that. Why? Because it's a needed skill. And I think we scare our youth with the college thing. Because like Alex said, you couldn't read in the third grade. You're sure not gonna, you know what I mean? Once you get to Psych 101 or Physics 2, you're gonna be lost. you're gonna be lost. And I think how do I say this respectfully? If school isn't your thing, there's still money to be made out here other than toting a gun and selling drugs.
Absolutely.
And I would like to get started on some kind of outreach for that, like ASAP. That would be nice.
Hey, that's good to hear, Saeed. We have Tim and I have been working on quite a few things, and we got some work that needs to be done. So we'll definitely we're going to be interested in bringing you on board with that. And you may have some other ideas that you just want to do, and we can support you as well. I hate to cut you all off. We got a solid 20 minutes, and we got a whole lot of questions, and I want to try to get through some of these questions if you all don't mind. So I'll read the question off. If it's something that you all want to answer, that's fine. If it's specifically geared to someone, I just ask that you do the best you can at answering that question. First one here says, where do we go from here now that America is listening? What action steps must we take?
All right, I'll go with that one first. One, it's what we've talked about already. If we can support our youth while they're still K through 12, that's an action side. That's an action item. We can address that.
Yeah.
Moving beyond that, if they're 18 to 35 and they haven't had a job, we can address that. Let's get them in Ivy Tech. Let's put some outreach. Let's put, let's hit where the youth are. Like, let's hit where they are. Put it on social media. It may not be the contemporary graphic that, we think of when it's, coming to trying to attract students, but let's make that angle. This summer is basically gone, but for next summer, let's make sure there's some programming in place for our youth K through 12 to make sure that they're getting their skills in or sharpening their skills as it relates to reading, math, and even if it's, teaching them the stock market, let's put a program in place that's teaching our kids that. I mean,
Absolutely.
we got a fake $20,000. Whoever gets to $100,000 first actually wins $1,000. They can invest in their own money. I mean, that's something simple. Let's put that into place. I think now, and maybe that's a Saturday program for students when school starts back. If school starts back the traditional way, I think the time is now, and that collective effort has to happen because we got to do something. The longer we wait, the more people that's gonna come up dead.
Yeah.
I want to piggyback off of that if I could. Alex just hit on a lot of the quality of life and socioeconomic things that we can do to move forward. I would like to see something to where at a federal level we can marry the two, and not figuratively but symbolically marry the office of the Attorney General to the education czar, to where there's actual civic and criminal justice taught in schools as a requirement, because everyone has to deal with law enforcement at some point or another, but you're never taught at how to deal with law enforcement at any point. I didn't learn what to do during a traffic stop in school. I didn't learn any of these things. And so what happened is I was a student in school, and then I became 18, and I was supposed to know this interaction. I was supposed to know, what laws to not break. I was supposed to know all these things. Well, I only knew not to do wrong because my parents instilled, right and wrong, right versus wrong in me. But as far as the laws or the ordinances in my specific location, where do you learn those things? When do you learn those things? So I would like to see something like that actually implemented in schools as part of, hey, you have to learn this and you have to pass this on a test to move on.
Thank
To
you.
go, to go to that, I mean, all the seniors take a government class. That's a requirement. Maybe that's
They
a
don't
section
teach
for
that. They
Yeah,
don't
I'm-
teach.
right. That's what I'm saying. Maybe that's a part of it.
Yeah, add it to it.
Okay.
But to answer your question, Wendy, you said the world is watching. Now we're at the place solution. That's what they're looking for, solutions. Now we've been talking forever. So everybody's looking for solutions that work. And I think that's what we're talking about now. They just have to be implemented and executed. That's all.
All right. Thank you all for answering that question. Phil, this next question is for you. What is the temperature of the Black officer here in Evansville at this time?
Well, that's a very that's a very loaded question, honestly. And first of all, I can only speak for me. I can't speak for every other African American officer, because if you know anything about African American men, I've had this discussion with several friends. I'll be open and honest. The journey of a dark-skinned African American is different from a light-skinned African American within our own community and outside of our own community. So that's a very loaded question. I can tell you what the temperature of myself is. I can tell you that when I see something that I feel is inappropriate, I address it, and I feel like that should be the standard. But I also understand that in my job, I have to go by these 4 words, and I'll say it over and over again. You have to go by the totality of the circumstance. You can't look at every situation and just group them all into one situation and say, this is what it is, or this is how this profession is. So when you're right, you're right. When you're wrong, you're wrong. And to see things happen at a level of, I guess, publicity, because you see things on social media and you see things in media, and it would give you this ideal that whatever you see is rampant and this is what's happening. And as a Black man, you have probably a 50% chance of getting killed at a traffic stop. That's simply not true. It's just not true. I've been in several traffic stops. I've never once been handcuffed, and I'm a Black man. And I wasn't always on the best side of the law. I didn't break the law. I don't put my business out there, but I wasn't always. I wasn't always on a straight arrow kid. I was blessed enough to make it out of situations when I was a young man to where I am. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm just this squeaky clean kid. I was blessed, and I had great parents, and my experiences are what I can speak on. Now, I can also speak on the stories that I've been told. I can speak on my experiences. I can tell you from a personal standpoint that I grew up in Clarksville, Tennessee, which is by Fort Campbell military base. The diversity in my hometown is much different from Evansville. I moved to Evansville, and I saw that Evansville was mostly white and Black with a growing population of Hispanic. That's it. Well, where I'm from, it's a bunch of African Americans. It's white. It's German Americans. You have Mexican Americans. You have them all blended in because of the influence of the military base. So moving to Evansville and come to Evansville in and of itself was a culture shock to me. To I guess be thrown into a world that's just Black and white, and a lot of our discussions have become that. And I don't think that they should be, but that is the reality of what it is. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the experiences of an African American male when dealing with law enforcement as an African American male versus what you think it would be for a white male to deal with police.
Thank you, Phil. I'm gonna go ahead and ask you another one while I have you up in front of me. It says, what advice do you have for a Black man when in a situation where the police is involved about how to stay safe in that situation?
Well, the number one word is respect. And I don't want anybody to run off and say, well, he just said you got to respect police. That's not what I'm saying, even though I think you should respect all mankind. And when I say respect, first of all, you have to have respect for yourself as a person and conduct yourself with some dignity. Respect your situation and your surroundings. Respect the officer as a person that's dealing with you. If you stopped on a traffic stop, the officer should have respect enough to say, hey, I'm officer such and such. This is the reason I stopped you. And you need to know the law. If you know better, you do better. I've seen video after video of people being stopped for what the officer says is a lawful reason. And I'm not giving you my ID. I'm not rolling down the window. That is not the way or the time to do that. First of all, you don't hold court on the side of the road. They have courthouses for that. Conduct yourself with some respect, and he or she should conduct themselves with some respect. So learning, like the due process, learning your Fourth Amendment law against unreasonable searches and seizures would do you well. Learning that in the court is where you deal with those battles. Learning the policies of your local police department is where you should deal with those battles. We have something called internal affairs that will investigate your claims. Evansville PD, to our credit, we're the first agency to go full-fledged body cam for all of our patrol officers. And we hold our officers accountable.
Thank you. Phil, I'm gonna leave you alone, I promise, in just a second.
That's okay. That's what I'm here for, Wendy.
Saeed, you're up next. I have a question, but I do want to ask you this, Phil. I have someone in the chat asking. It says, if I can get it to look right, it says, I have a question for Phil. I believe there's someone on the call that is going. He said, I'm an African-American man applying for EPD. Let me see if I can get it. Yeah, it says applying for EPD. It's cutting it off right here. Can you give him some insight on that?
Absolutely. First of all, we'd love to have you. Thank you for even wanting to pick up this,
Phil,
this profession.
Sorry,
Huh?
Phil, I didn't get the bottom of it, and I don't want to leave it off. I'm sorry.
Okay.
He said, I'm an African-American male applying for EPD. I often get criticized for it. What are some tips of ignoring this?
Oh, of ignoring the criticism?
Mm-hmm.
I tell you what, when you figure out, you let me know. Because it's going to happen. I'm gonna let you know this off the top. You'll be held to a different standard as a Black police officer. Number one, in your own community, you will be applauded for becoming a police officer. Black people love to see other Blacks become police officers. Know that, but also know that once you start enforcing the laws as a police officer, a lot of people in that same community are gonna be like, "Hold up, I was happy that you got the badge, but I didn't know you was gonna, not let stuff slide." So then you have to be comfortable enough to know within yourself that you are whatever your name is. I'm Philip, and I'm not Uncle Tom. I'm not Uncle Ruckus, because you will be called those names. You will be called some very harsh names. So understand that, but understand that they're not mad at you. Understand that they're mad at the uniform and what you represent.
Okay. I have a question. I'm probably going to mess this up because I've moved past it. This question is for Saeed. Saeed, what are some things that Ivy Tech, Saeed, what would you like to see Ivy Tech do to recruit and support African-American males?
I think I briefly touched on that earlier. We've got to get people on campus, whether it's here, whether it's the Indianapolis campus or the Terre Haute campus. We've got to get people who look like us in the building, whether that's professors, whether that's, special guest speakers, whether you have, Zoom meetings like this. But I think it's important to see people who look like you doing the things that you're interested in. And I will applaud Ivy Tech, the Southwest campus that I attended in Evansville. I will applaud them because during my stay there, I met some really nice people, some really nice people who not only taught me, but I still have access to them if I have trouble at work. Mike Zakali, Donna Zimmerman, John Anslinger, and if I start naming everybody, I'm gonna forget. But I can definitely say that these three off the top of my head, I can give them a call at any time, whether it's school related or not, and just pushing those types of relationships. And I don't want to say favoritism, because it's not favoritism. I never got a passing grade for being Black. I didn't get extra credit points, but those specific instructors took a little more time to say, "Hey, man, this is good what you're doing. Pick it up," or, "Hey, you're doing really well. I need you to, maybe give a little more in this area," or, "You know what? Hey, today was great, man. See you next week." Just a little effort. Show a little effort, because it is hard. It's hard being the only one.
Okay. I see someone making a comment saying we used to have officer friendly in our schools. Why not bring that back? That gives students another opportunity to look at our law enforcement officers. What do you have to say about that?
Give that to Phil. Can I ask Phil a question?
Absolutely, Saeed. Go ahead.
Okay, so do you think, and I don't want to start naming police officers because I'll definitely forget them, but I have a
Don't be
nice
starting no
relationship.
trouble, man.
Hey, look, hey.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I have an extremely near and dear relationship with Sergeant Deeg, but that's only because Sergeant Deeg was my liaison while I was at Bossy. Do you think it would be worth making that a requirement to new recruits to serve as a liaison for some of our inner city schools? And even if you don't want to say inner city schools, make it a requirement that you serve at least a semester or a year in an elementary school, in a middle school, and in high school before you go and you're a beat cop, or if you even say that. But if before you're out and policing the streets, don't you think it's important that the police know who are in the streets?
Okay, so I'll answer that in best way I can. So the liaison officers that you see in your schools, they're actually juvenile detectives. So they are basically, they wear their uniform, which separates them from what people would perceive as a detective, but they are juvenile detectives. They investigate juvenile crimes because that's where they'll be at, around only juveniles, right?
Wow.
So a new recruit does not have that knowledge or the skill set as a detective. I mean, you have to have at least 3 years on to even become a detective. You know, there's so much that you have to learn. And so I don't think it does any officer a service as far as becoming a police officer to throw them in the role of detective before they learn how to be a patrol officer. I believe that having an officer start out in a patrol function is the best way to get them in contact with their community. That's if they take advantage of it. If you're getting in your car and you're only taking calls because the radio, it runs you. I mean, a lot of people have cell phones, so we get a lot of 911 calls. So it is possible that you can go an entire shift without being able to stop and make those connections. But every day is not like that. So when you have those days where, you know, it's not pouring down rain and the radio's still not killing you, those are the times to stop and talk to the people that sit on the porches. Those are the times to walk into the local gas stations or businesses in your beat and introduce yourself, and stop at basketball games where kids are playing and shoot a couple hoops with them. That's how you get ingratiated in the communities that you serve. So I think that we have the right formula as far as placement for new officers. It's just that we got to get the opportunities and teach people how to take advantage of those things.
Is there any way you could regulate that? And maybe my approach was a bit different because I don't know anything about being a police officer. So if there's already a system in place, could you make those a requirement, almost like community service? Because I couldn't get hired without having a certain amount of community service. I'm sure Alex probably couldn't have his job without a certain amount of community service. If that be what you have in place, is there any way that you monitor that to make sure that your officers are engaging with the community and not just when something goes wrong?
And that's
Right.
a great dialogue. I think that we have to make notes of these things because I don't know. I know that you're not able to answer all those questions, Phil, and I don't want to leave them all on you, but I do want to pick those back up because those are very important. We have several things in the chat that is saying that it starts way before now. It starts back in elementary, middle school, forming relationships. There's all kind of great things in the chat that I'm not going to be able to get to today. I do want to say thank you all for everyone's input and everything that is within the chat. What I will do is make sure I get all of these things typed up and all these questions and things and try to get the best possible answers so that I can share them with people who are wanting the answers to some of these things. What I've heard today, though, is that there's work to do.
Yeah.
I've heard that there's some people here that are willing to do the work. I've heard there's some people here that are willing to be our allies. So I just think that this is going to cause for another conversation. Yeah. I'm actually looking forward to bringing you gentlemen on campus this year. The conversation doesn't stop here. The work is not complete, so the conversation doesn't stop. I had this conversation today because I know that our students are not going to return to campus the same, and I wanted faculty, staff, and students to be aware of that, and I kind of wanted us to be able to know some things that we can assist others with. I wanted us to be able to identify that everybody is not okay, but it doesn't take a professional to be a good listener, and it doesn't take someone of a wealthy person to be supportive. All of us can be respectful to others and support each other in what we are going through and continue to work together for the best possible outcome. We only have 2 minutes left. I didn't really want to take those last 2 minutes, but I wanted to let everyone know that the questions in the chat, I will get answers as the best that I can. I'll stay on for a few minutes after this with our panelists so I can walk through some things with them. But I just want to say thank you to everyone. I mean, we only had an hour for this conversation.
It's good.
But we know that 1 hour is not enough to get the work done. 1 hour is not enough to get the voices heard. This is just a foundation for many things to come. This is just a foundation for us to create many conversations that will happen on our campus. You all have been very helpful with us today. I think you all have given us an insight on how to intentionally recruit some African-American male students. We'll take that back as a faculty staff campus to go and do some work, and we'll listen to you all. We'll put some works in and work to recruit some more students. I like that you all have made yourself readily available to us to come on our campus, because all of you have been on our campus in some capacity. And for all of you, I just want to say thank you all for sharing your time with us today. Anybody, people just aren't wanting to have this conversation right now. It's a tough conversation. I know some questions were thrown at you all, but you all did a great job. And I do appreciate you all. And I want to go on record for saying thank you to all of you. I also want to say thank you to our faculty, staff, our students, and all of our community members that joined in with us today. If you have some ideas for us, feel free to share those with us. If there's some things that you want to partner with Ivy Tech on, please just let us know. We're looking to provide supports for everyone at this time. We're looking to increase enrollment in all students. So we definitely are taking a great look right now at our African-American males and want to increase those numbers as well. So again, thank you to everybody. I know our call is ending now. I will go ahead and end the call, but if you all can